Welcome back to the Canadian Ruck. This is Jamie Gray. This pod, we welcome and feature Ander Monro. Ander played at the 2007 and 2011 Rugby World Cups, played pro in Scotland, England, and Italy. 30 caps with Canada, over 65 points at the fly-out position. Played also at the University of Edinburgh. Ander is now working at Queen Margaret High School. Before we get to Ander, just those ways that you can get in contact with us. So just some plugs. We do this every week just so you know where to go, especially if you're new to the podcast. If you're returning, you know where we are. We're on Twitter at Canadian Ruck, Instagram, _Canadian_Ruck, Facebook at the Canadian Ruck, and our email is thecanadianruck@gmail.com. Where can you hear us? Where can you watch? Well, we're on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, and Castbox. Watch, listen, follow, subscribe, share, feedback. Those are things you got to do. Lastly, if you don't know where to go, if you want to send some of these pods to some of your friends, your buddies, whatever, just send them our website, canadianruck.weebly.com. That has all of our pertinent information that you're gonna want to share with people. Well, what's going on in the world of rugby right now? Well, there's been a few things, and let's look at some local stuff here in New Canada. Road to the Rugby World Cup. Senior women's 15s, the top 50 are having their selection camp. Now, there are a few missing, but their top 50 that are available are in Nova Scotia as we speak. They're there from August 13th to the 21st. There's going to be evaluations, weight, skill, and training sessions, followed by the Red v Black match at the Halifax Wanderers ground on Friday the 20th. Great venue to watch rugby. Due to COVID protocols, only 4,000 fans can get in to watch. So make sure you get your tickets. Tickets are range from $23 to $35, which are great prices. Tickets can be purchased on the Rugby Canada website or through Ticketmaster. Women, as you probably know, are currently ranked third in the world and come into the 2022 Rugby World Cup. They'll be in Pool B, along with USA, the European qualifier, and the Asian qualifier. If you're in the Halifax region, make sure you get there for that red-black match this coming weekend. Well, what else? Well, this one's awesome. I love this as well. Paralympics begin August 24th, so 10 days away. It's amazing. Canada has a great squad, and this is an exciting time for these lads. Their matches. So check the Paralympic website to make sure. But when I can gather, Wednesday, August 25th, v Great Britain at 5:30 a.m. Thursday, August 26th, v the US at 11:30 p.m. Friday, August 27th, v New Zealand at 5:30 a.m. Medal matches are on Sunday, August 29th. And from what I can see, it looks like CBC's airing the Paralympics. So check for game times in your viewing region. And if you're unfamiliar with wheelchair rugby, then I encourage you to check out pods 1, 2, 3, and 4 of season 2. Pods 1, 2, and 3 are great rugby chats. We had Eric Rodriguez, Mike Whitehead, and Patrice Pico Desjardins on for solo interviews, and they were amazing conversations. Pod 4 might be an interesting one for you to do, but make sure you're on YouTube because all four of those three guests, along with me watching and asking questions, actually watch a match and they break down how wheelchair rugby is played. And it's very entertaining because these lads are very knowledgeable, very smart, and it was a lot of fun to watch and actually learn the intricacies. So be sure to watch and listen to those pods to prep for the upcoming Olympics, or just check them out on their website at wheelchairrugby.ca. What else is going on? Well, this is my favorite annual tournament, the Rugby Championship. I hold it right up there with the World Cup and the Lions Tour because it is amazing, amazing rugby. So game one of the Bledisloe was last week with the All Blacks pulling out a tight win over the Aussies. I think everybody probably knows that by now. Matches this weekend are all on Saturday. So the All Blacks actually squared off against Australia this morning, 4:05 Atlantic time at Eden Park in Auckland. Last week, the Aussies scored 3 tries in the final 15, leading to some backlash towards the All Blacks. The All Blacks took 18 penalties to the 9 from the Aussies. Captain Whitelock was heard telling his team to back the F up on defense. John Kerwin, who played a long time ago, even came out and said it was the worst 30 minutes of All Black rugby he's seen in the past 5 years. To which Whitelock replied, "Everyone is entitled to their own opinion." And that was his. He's an ex-player. He knows sometimes that what you're trying to do takes a while to wear teams down. Wonder if that happened this week. The Aussies had their hands full this weekend as the All Blacks rarely lose at Eden Park, and they geared up, putting that bad form into the rearview mirror. So the All Blacks actually came out on top. Spoiler alert, if you haven't watched the game, if you recorded it, skip right now. The All Blacks came out on top with a 57-22 win, massive, massive victory. It was the All Blacks' highest score versus Australia in 118 years. This win keeps the Bledisloe in New Zealand for a 19th consecutive year which is pretty damn impressive. The ABs held a slim 5-point lead at half, but exploded in the second with 5 tries, including 4 in a matter of 18 minutes. Looks like the All Blacks made some quality adjustments from week 1 and were able to pull out a massive, massive victory. Second match saw South Africa v Argentina. This one kicked off at noon Atlantic time in the Nelson Mandela Stadium in Port Elizabeth. The Boks are coming off that series win over the Lions, while Argentina is well rested. The Boks have also won 26 of the past 30 via Argentina, so this should be an interesting match for both sides. The Boks are looking to continue their dominance versus Argentina while riding the momentum of beating the Lions, while Argentina will be looking to come out and find a win versus the mighty Springbok. But it wasn't to be for the Puma, as the Boks clawed their way to a 32-12 win. Even during this, the Boks were still able to rest a few of their bodies that played versus the Lions, but they continued their style of tough D and high ball as they rested 10 of their Lions tour regulars. Only one match on tap next weekend with South Africa facing the Pumas again, Saturday the 21st at noon Atlantic. All in all, some excellent rugby happened this weekend and coming very soon. Canada women's red versus black match coming up, Paralympic wheelchair rugby coming up, and the Rugby Championship today, next weekend, and then carrying on for another few weeks. That, along with club rugby throughout Canada, get out and get your rugby fix this week. East Coast Roast Coffee is an independent micro roaster coffee in St. John, New Brunswick. What microbreweries are to beer, East Coast Roast is to coffee. They source from independent farmers and co-ops all over the world and roast in small batches to bring something interesting to the local coffee scene. If you're into really fresh coffee, head on over to their website at eastcoastroast.ca or pick up beans from Jeremiah's, Paris Crew, the Art Warehouse, or Woodchucks in St. John, New Brunswick. All right, so the Canadian Ruck welcomes Ander Monro. Ander played 2007 Rugby World Cup in France, 2011 in New Zealand. He's a mainstay of Rugby Canada for quite a few years at the fly half position. And we're very fortunate to have him today. He's on summer vacation, much like myself, but it took us a while to get this set up. So, Ander, welcome to the Canadian Ruck.
Thanks very much, Jamie. Really pleased I could join you and glad we could get it set up.
Awesome. All right, so let's jump in here. Talk to us about your beginnings in rugby, North York, Ontario. You had high school there, you went off to university, and you get tapped to play for Team Canada. How did that all transfold for you?
Yeah, great question. I mean, and I'll give you a bit of a Coles Notes version of it. Otherwise we'll be here most of the day. But I was fortunately in how I look back on it, born in Canada in North York. My dad was in the army, and so he was serving out there it was really for only about a year. So it wasn't long, and it was just a coincidence really that I have this Canadian association. And at quite a young age then we moved to Germany, and beyond that, we'd go to Northern Ireland and Italy and England and moving around quite a bit. So when I was 7, I went to boarding school in Scotland, and there you had to do everything. So we had rugby, field hockey, cricket, tennis, and all these other sorts of activities and sports that we could do. And my older brother had gone a couple of years before me, and so he'd come back with this oval ball that we were chucking around the garden, and I was just really very competitive with him, and he went to rugby camp as well, and I sort of saw the game and experienced the game then. So I couldn't wait to get stuck in. So while getting on an airplane when I was 8 years old in Düsseldorf Airport in Germany and flying away from my parents to boarding school in Edinburgh in Scotland was a bit of a strange thing to do, and I probably wouldn't do it to my own children now, but I just couldn't wait to play really all sports, but rugby was one that stood out, as well as cricket for me. So started playing at quite a young age, and just fortunate to have a lot of good coaches through that school. Malcolm Chang Lane was one who actually ended up refereeing me when we were playing for Canada, when I was playing for Canada against Barbados in 2007 Rugby World Cup qualifier, which was just so bizarre to have one of my schoolboy coaches referee an international match. But him, and then I moved to Glenarmond after that, and had some great coaches there, Bill Crow, and he was just he was great from an attitude development standpoint. And Nick Allen, who played for the RAF as well, had him in grade 11 and 12. He was good from a sort of game understanding point, and then moved on to Edinburgh University, but played for Heriot's Rugby Club in Edinburgh. and then was signed for Edinburgh after that. And I think that's where, well, I know that's where I made my decision to play for Canada. And in part, things weren't moving in quite the direction I'd hoped at Edinburgh. And at the same time, Mike Pike, who played fullback for Canada and then Aussie rules for the Sydney Swans, she won the grand final with them. He came to Edinburgh and started sort of whispering. He found out I was born in Toronto and started sort of whispering in my ear and said, well, you should come out. You probably have a good crack at 10 in the Canadian team, and get in touch with the coach and see whether you can come out for a trial. And so those things happened, and so the rest is history. Rick Suggett invited me out to in 2006 to the Churchill Cup, and just things just worked pretty well from there.
I miss the Churchill Cup. I always love watching that.
Yeah.
But you talked about your parents sending away at an early age, like 8 years old. That's pretty young for boarding school. You had relatives in Scotland, right? Your grandfather was there.
My grandfather was there. I mean, my parents, we had a family home in Scotland as well. So my heritage and lineage is Scottish, and so we'd return there for breaks and often for sort of leave out weekends and for the occasional half term, depending on where my parents were, we'd go up north to our home in the north of Scotland, in Morayshire. My grandfather lived in Dumfries. My uncle was also fairly close by in Scotland. So yeah, we did have relatives, and it was an area I was familiar with. But yeah, didn't go home that much. It was a lot of long terms, but just enjoying sort of enjoying sport and school. Your
grandfather, though, he was former president of Scottish Rugby, right?
He was.
How did that help with you and your development with rugby?
It's an interesting one. I mean, he was the president of the Scottish Rugby Union. I didn't know that at the time when I was younger, but it wasn't. I don't know. It didn't really. I don't think I really appreciated it. I think I appreciated it later, once I was sort of I think sort of 19, 20, 23, and I just started playing club rugby with a few people who knew and met some coaches who'd known him from back when they were players and that side of things. So they knew the family connection and always spoke very highly of him. But we had quite an old-fashioned relationship, sort of grandparent grandson relationship. So we didn't talk too much. We didn't speak too much about rugby. He'd come and watch some of my games at school from time to time. And I remember there's a few matches where we went to Murrayfield and we would sort of be taken up by one of the staff members, and we'd sort of meet him on at some level. He'd been having a lunch and doing all that kind of stuff, that sort of pre-match piece. So we'd sort of meet him up there and then go and sit with him in the stands. And I remember like February can be quite a cold day at Murrayfield, and so we hadn't probably really taken enough of the right kind of clothing. I was there with my older brother, and so we went to the stands with grandfather, and he pulls out this big rug, and we're like, oh, brilliant, like just a savior, this is ideal. Anyway, he folds it about 4 times, plonks it down on the seat and sits on it. Yeah, it was brilliant. So
that's a grandfather move.
Yeah, there was just not enough to go around. But we did get some nice Highland toffees and things like that throughout the game. So no, I definitely remember his involvement in rugby, but it wasn't until later that I really appreciated perhaps his impact on some of his peers in Scottish rugby in that world. So it's an interesting one. I'd say I was probably more aware of his career in politics and just as a Conservative MP and that side of things. So yeah, I think his sort of time in public service was really significant, and I think I was more appreciative of that, and that he obviously achieved a lot through his life, and that in itself was sort of inspiring, from thinking, well, how am I going to make my mark? And I was grabbing my father as well was a very successful soldier as well in the Scottish Regiment, the Queen's Own Highlanders, and so again there was that sort of sense of that question of what is success in your life, and what does that look like, and just trying to drive yourself to be better and to achieve as much as possible. So I was sort of had, I guess, through my grandfather and father, figures who I really looked up to and wanted to sort of emulate from a sort of an achievement standpoint, I guess you could say. And all the while had a very encouraging mother along the way who just always trying to endorse that sort of self-belief and sort of encourage that self-belief.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sounds like a really close family there. You talk nicely about your brother and everything too. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Let's jump back into the rugby. Let's go to the 2007 World Cup in France. 3 close losses and then that draw against Japan. What do you remember from that 07 World Cup?
I remember very much just the atmosphere of the tournament. I was new to the team. Looking back on it, I wasn't really as ready as I could have been for that. I say could have been, but I just wasn't ready to really compete well at that level, at test match level in a World Cup. And I think we had some big names in the team. We had Mike James was playing, Rod Snow was in the squad. We had Morgan Williams, Jamie Cudmore, just to name a few. And so had some real sort of World Cup experience there. And so that was hugely helpful. I really remember, their voices before the tournament going in. This is what to expect when we go in. These are some of the sort of behaviors that we're going to need to model, and these are going to be our approaches to the games. And so that really came through. I think the experience of being in France with just some of the hype around that was a really enjoyable one. And then we actually kicked off and started the campaign fairly well against Wales, and we were up at half time. I think maybe sort of 17-9 or something like that. I can't quite remember. Not sure if we got 17 on the scoreboard. I might be inflating that a bit, Jamie. But it was good.
I'll double check.
Craig Culpin intercept from about the 22, and Culps, who I think, if we'd done fitness testing, probably one of the least fit in the squad. Just on just sort of lifestyle and diet, one of those guys that didn't really seem to tend to that sort of thing, but he was just a fantastic rugby player. And so Culps intercepts, and I don't think anyone really thought he was going to go the length, apart from James Pritchard, who ran an awesome sort of intercept line and seemed to sort of nudge out the Welsh 10 on the way over. But yeah, that was a really positive way to start the tournament. And then second half, things derailed slightly, and I think Wales brought on probably 260 caps worth of players, and with 4 guys just after half time, and they really ramped up the pace of the game and the pressure and turned the screw, and in the end it was a pretty comfortable win for them, I think. But yeah, it was Fiji. We actually played Fiji in Cardiff, which was weird, flying sort of internationally to go and play a second game out there and play a group game out there. I watched that game from the bench, didn't get on the park, but I mean, a hell of a lot of heart out on the pitch, and it was we were 4 points behind, goal line stand. We'd had a try disallowed, and then there was an intercept essentially, again right in the last minute, and then Fiji intercepted and went the length, and I think ended up winning by 10, or 11. It probably would have been. But anyway, it was that was a bit of a heartbreaking game, because that's the sort of game or the sort of win that gives you that momentum into the next game against Japan. And again, we've got a habit of tying games at the World Cup against Japan. But again, I thought we'd got that game in the bag. I watched that one from the stands myself, and really felt like we had it. And it was just another heartbreaker at the end. And that's just again where I really realized how, my first cap, I realized how ruthless test match rugby was. It's just at an incomprehensible pace until you've been on the field and experienced it, and also just how ruthless teams are when you make a mistake. Coming from even a professional club level, where mistakes are often severely punished, but it's just not the same. Not
to the extent.
No, not as clinical. So anyway, that was disappointing, and Australia was. I started that game and probably one of my better games for Canada at that stage, but again, it was a really wet day, and so I don't know. It was overall, we didn't feel a great sense of success after that, and we were a bit deflated at the end of the tournament. And I mean, that sport for you going with high hopes, and We narrowly missed out on a couple of wins against Fiji and Japan, and it just turns, let's say 3 or 4 minutes in sport, if it goes the other way, you end up having a pretty successful tournament, but we just didn't. And so that was where we sort of left that World Cup feeling a little bit deflated, I'd say.
Well, you talked to it. One of the biggest things with Canada is the lack of depth. You talked about Wales bringing in 260 caps with 4 guys, and the momentum of the game just switches, right? So
yeah,
that's one of the issues that rugby in Canada has faced for a number of years. Let's move ahead 4 years to New Zealand. Had a win and a draw, 2 losses. Good New Brunswick boy, Chauncey O'Toole, was on that roster. He's a buddy of mine, so he was one of my first guests. What was the difference between New Zealand, which is the mecca of rugby, and France? Like, what were the difference between your teams and how you played there?
Yeah, I think I guess just from a venue standpoint, and I'd been to New Zealand previously touring with Canada and playing there, and it's just everyone who's been there and anyone who's played there will know what I mean, but it's just described as this almost a religion there, and like it really is. It's phenomenal how much they care, and it's wonderful to see how much they weave in the Maori culture into everything they do there, all the ceremonies, and it was a feature of everything we did, whether it was as I say, the sort of the arrival, just the welcomes at the airports, and all the different hackers from the high schools and youth organizations and things like that, to training grounds, to families, whether they were local New Zealand families or Maori families putting on events after training, food and things like that for the team. It was fabulous to see that sort of unity in the country, and everyone just getting behind this event, which really just consumed even more so probably the lives of people in New Zealand when we were there. So that was very, very cool to see that, and to be part of something so special that clearly meant so much to a lot of people. So it was a sort of an extra level of inspiration. I think it was, for me anyway, I'd obviously been in the team for 5 years by then, so was feeling a lot more settled, and had some other new rugby experiences over in Italy. Had played for a couple of years there, and then also over here in Canada too. So it was really nice that I'd had the kind of development I'd had in Italy, and maybe I'll speak a bit more about that later, and then moved over to Canada to actually, I guess, sort of feel more Canadian, if you know what I mean. I'm not sounding as if I really hail from North York, but growing up, I did watch, when I was watching the Olympics, I would look to see where the Canadian athletes finished. So I always knew that nice. I had that connection, but I never felt it that strongly, other than from a rugby standpoint when I moved over to start playing for Canada. And then when I moved to live in Canada to really get a better feel for some BC Canadian culture, just know more Canadian people and a greater variety of Canadians. So I think that from a personal standpoint, I felt much better prepared going into the 2011 World Cup. We as a squad were really cohesive, and Paddy Riordan as a captain had done a phenomenal job. Domestic player, he'd played some pro rugby in Wales, but really a lot of that squad were playing in Canada and were domestic players, so feet firmly on the ground. And Paddy was definitely salt of the earth and keen to make sure that we maintain that sort of Canadian identity of just honest grafters and hard workers. And I think that Kieran Crowley's approach to the game and just trying to play that 15-man game really suited our player profile as well at the time. Obviously had some pretty impressive backline players as well, with James Pritchard and Phil McKenzie, DTH Van der Merwe, and Ed Fairhurst at 9 was he'd just been playing in Cardiff a few seasons earlier, and he just had a great game awareness and a good vision, great skill set. So we had a good sort of link between the forwards and backs, and we just tried to play a pretty wide game, probably a wider game than definitely a wider game than we tried to play in 2007. And it just seemed to work well, and we kicked the tournament off like so well in Whangarei against Tonga. Even though we were behind at half time and playing uphill into the wind, in the second half, we just managed to claw back. And I think it was the Churchill Cup that you mentioned earlier, that you missed that tournament, and playing the likes of Ireland A and playing France A, and beating France A, and feeling that like we had the confidence to win games in the last 10 or 15 minutes. And I think that we didn't truly gain that until about 2010. Certainly with my sort of experience, we chuck the kitchen sink at teams and hope for the best and try and cling on in the last 20. Whereas I think we had a much, but that was often we were playing the Irish, the top Irish team, you'd be playing the Welsh team. So when you started moving to playing the A teams in the Churchill Cup, or we play Portugal and those other nations that were ranked closer to us, then it is about, okay, so what tactics do we need to employ for the next 10 minutes? What is our strategy going into this game? And just, being there and having a real opportunity to win those tight games. And so we sort of learned how to win in the last 10 or 15 minutes through the Churchill Cup experiences and through playing those other nations of our rankings. And that helped us big time against Tonga.
Yeah, it's it definitely, those Churchill Cup years were I think were a boon for Canadian rugby. It gave you a chance to understand how to close out a game, or as you said, like, let's focus on these next 10 minutes. What do we have to do? Where maybe now that's not the case, because you're not getting I guess Canada's not getting those high test matches where they have a chance to put teams away, right? So you look at the games against Wales and England the last few weeks, and the boys played admirably, but we've also haven't played in 2 years. And Major League Rugby, even though it's professional, it's not quite up there with professional rugby in Europe. So Churchill Cup, I think, did a lot of great things for Rugby Canada. Hopefully that gets resurrected.
Yeah.
Talk to us about your time playing pro. You mentioned Italy. Like, how was that for your development? How was that, as a Scottish lad with Canadian roots playing in another country altogether again?
Yeah, I think, I always was interested in exploring either France or Italy from a rugby perspective, and just having that, sort of international flavor. I don't know whether that had come from doing so much traveling, sort of from school to where my parents were based, and so just sort of thirsting after that international travel. But moving to Italy was it was an interesting move, because I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't speak the language. I learned I quite enjoy languages, and my teammates will know that I really enjoy impersonating people, and trying to sort of master their tones and mannerisms and things like that. And so in some ways I was quite well. You got to
give us an example here.
Oh, geez.
You said it.
I did say it. I'll do something. I'll squeeze something in later, James. It comes up. Actually, I've got a little story that I might tell. So
perfect.
Yeah. So anyway, loved picking up the language. Really enjoyed the culture there, and we had a good team. That it was actually, interestingly enough, I'm sporting the Rugby Colorno stash here.
Nice,
Jamie, and it's really fond memories. We had a good side looking at trying to get promoted into the top 10 that year, and we made the semi-finals. We didn't make it, but lots of good friends made and challenges had there. And we also had a coach who came in, a South African coach called Gert Poole, and he played 10 for Namibia, and he was also helping to sort of mentor the Blue Bulls coach at the time, and studied rugby at Stellenbosch University, and Donny Craven was the lecturer of rugby. Like, it was a course at Stellenbosch.
That's cool.
So his knowledge of the game was encyclopedic, and he was phenomenal. Being a 10, I would say he had the greatest impact on me as a player, in my ability to see the game and to make that much better quality decisions. And he also calmed me down. I was way too anxious and just frenetic, I would say, mentally. And so he really helped me settle as a player and see the field. And I think that ended up becoming a strength of mine, was quality of decision making, and then hopefully having the skills to execute. Because I think my my catch pass and my kicking skills were quite good, but just knowing when and where to and how to employ them was a step that professional experience in Italy gave me. I think the professional experience before that at Edinburgh was also hugely valuable. I mean, we had 18 international players in the Edinburgh squad when I signed on with them, including 3 All Blacks. And Todd Blackadder was the club captain at the time, and some sessions with Toddy were really inspirational. We just sort of sit around in a circle, and he'd talk to us about cleaning windows and stuff like that, and how anyone can clean a window, but not very many people get right up into the corners and clean out all that little grit and grime that most people just either don't see or can't be bothered doing. And if you were late to training, oh my goodness, one of the guys, Ned Kelly, who coached out in Hong Kong for a while, he was late to one meeting, and Toddy goes, "Kid, mate, you don't want to be late for another meeting." And Ned's like, "Okay." So he was late the next day, and Toddy goes, "Right, get it on the field." So literally after training, we do these down and ups. So from the dead ball line to the try line, chest behind the line every time. Just we usually do sets of 10. So Ned, he had to do a set of 10 with every single player at training. So there were 33 of us at training that day. So to do 33 down sets of 10 down and ups back to back, and we would just relay in. Anyway, it was so. Just a few really, really good rugby lessons learned there. But again, it was a team that was hugely inspirational, because it was most of the Scotland team at that time that I would train with and play with. So lots of great habits, but a tough nut to crack from a selection standpoint. And so that was part of it. Never really made it from the Edinburgh rugby standpoint. Never cracked the team.
Well, that sounds like you had some pretty big names there, but it also sounds like it helped your development quite a lot to get you to, the top of the game in Canada and 2 Rugby World Cups. But looking ahead, Rugby USA is putting bids in for the 2027, 2031 Rugby World Cups. Should Canada jump on board? Should we get involved? I mean, we've got a lot of great rugby cities in the country that could host. Is it something that you think that should happen, or is it something, let's let the states do it and we'll just feed off of their exposure?
I'm not sure feeding off another country's exposure has the same kind of an impact. I mean, I think it's probably better than nothing. It'd be great to have it in North America, full stop. But visiting my brothers and in London in 2012 when the Olympics was being hosted there, and I could just see the impact that was having on just the nation and the youth as well. And I sort of followed some of the storylines afterwards on what that impact was on youth sport, just because I was interested to see what those major tournaments do for young people in those countries. And I think there's no substitute for having it in your own country. And I don't know what the business side of things looks like for Rugby Canada or for Canada if we were able to do that. But I think it's absolutely a good idea to have a crack at it, and it would be amazing. I mean, it's exactly the kind of exposure that Canadian rugby needs, and people need to be introduced to the game and to the culture of the game, and to the fans as well. I think seeing the fans and the supporters and people chatting about the sport in bars and things like that, and I think it would inspire a lot of people. It would probably convert a lot of people, and having that. But borrowing stadiums, I mean, who knows where the games would be played, but we're going to need stadiums with, that can hold 30, 40,000 and that kind of thing. And so whether it's football grounds or, or other stadia around Canada, it would be so cool to have that on Canadian soil. So I don't know what it looks like. I mean, it's been done before. I mean, France was the host nation in 2007, but they put in an agreement. I'm not sure what the trade-off was with some of these countries, but Murrayfield hosted games, Twickenham hosted games, Cardiff, there were games. And so it's not beyond the realms of possibility, even if we can host, one pool match from each pool or something like that. That would be really significant for the country. So that'd be awesome if we could do that.
I agree with you 100%. You touched on a little bit here. how do we get more players in Canada? Like we mentioned before we were recording about parents with injury concerns or anxiety over their kid getting injured, or other sports come into play. I guess what makes rugby different that you could talk to a parent or you could talk to a kid to get them to try rugby? How would you do that?
It's a great question. I think it's the stories behind the game, and I think it is the values of the game, and I think those are. I think it's through stories and how those values come through within the stories. I grew up and was part of a country that had a pretty strong rugby culture already, and so I wasn't necessarily asking this question so much as I was growing up. And I think though, through things like some of the tours, I've been really lucky to go on some fantastic school tours with when I was working at Shawnigan Lake. We used to go back to the UK and the players would billet with families in the UK. And it was just always good. I remember one tour, one of the players was billeting with a family, and they worked out that this player's father had billeted with that player's father when 25 years earlier, 20 years earlier, or whatever it was. And it's just there's so many connections in the rugby world, and there's so many great stories of support, and I think of people really developing strong character through the game. I mean, those people who've read much about Jamie Cudmore, or who have heard Jamie Cudmore speak, and the impact rugby's had on his life is just, it's a great example of how it can provide people with direction and just, I don't know, friendship, enjoyment. It doesn't need to necessarily be life-changing, but I think the ability to laugh at yourself is really important, and develop a sense of humor is important too. And I don't know, I don't know the answer, Jamie, to that question, but I think it's somehow helping people see what the value of the game is, over and above the sort of the injury potential, that sort of off-putting piece. I mean, I think the trade-off is worth it. You can get injured doing a lot of things in life, and you can get ill, in really unfortunate ways that you can't do anything about. But to have, I think, access to a sport that does create bonds that are different, and that creates a type of character that I think is really well suited to working for for teamwork, and applying it beyond rugby is also really important too.
Those are really good thoughts. You mentioned humor there, so we're going to jump to our quick fire section now and see what you have for these answers. He's taking a big drink of water here. All right, about 20 questions, half rugby based, half personality based. You ready to give it a go?
Okay, yeah, sure.
Are you nervous?
Wait, a little.
All right, question one. Who's the best team you've ever faced?
Oh, All Blacks 2011 World Cup.
Yeah, that's a good shout. I do tell you, though, I was disappointed. I was messaging Chauncey from over there, and when they benched Richie McCaw for that game, because it was supposed to be his 100th test, and I was like, you must be excited. You're going to line up against McCaw. And he just fired back. He's not playing. He's like, don't talk. He was mad.
Well, I know. Well, McCaw had a broken foot, and they decided they weren't going to play in that game. And
Carter was out too.
And Carter tore his groin off the bone the day before kicking. So yeah, I didn't get a chance to play against Dan Carter, but yeah,
that would have been a good run. All right, who's the best player you ever faced?
Oh wow, I think I'm just going to say Johnny Sexton.
Okay.
He came on again for Ireland A when we were playing then, and I think he was 21, and he was basically arriving on the scene, and we were going well, and I felt we were going to win that match, and he came on with about 25 minutes to go, and he single-handedly changed the game.
Wow.
And yeah, I would say Johnny Sexton. He was phenomenal.
Yeah, tremendous player. All right, toughest player you ever faced. And this, when I ask toughest, I mean it's that guy that you just hoping Cudmore comes along and tackles him for you.
Jerome Kano.
Okay. Yes.
I mean, he's indestructible. It was unbelievable. After we played the All Blacks in the shower, I remember Brian Smith Smitty going, guys, does anyone notice how hard it is to tackle Jerome Kano? and like Kleberger, who'd been destroying Tongans, a few weeks earlier, was like, yeah, like that guy's impossible to bring down. And I remember Smitty tried to tackle him. Kleberger got in there, tried to get his head in the spokes. I think I had a hand on one of his jerseys. Anyway, he is an absolute machine. Anyway, Jerome Kano, without a doubt. Cudmore and he would have a good one.
What was the best match you were ever a part of?
Probably, I don't know. Probably was Tonga at Whangarei. I just love that game. But I think the France A Churchill Cup is a very close second. Okay. Beating them was amazing too.
Yeah, that sounds good. What's your favorite rugby tradition?
I like the sort of the swapping jerseys and the chat after the game. I like those things. I think they were always really enjoyable. Yeah,
I like that about rugby. Game's over, have a drink, shake hands, chat a little bit. Like that social aspect's great. What was your first cap song?
I don't remember. I'm not even sure I was made to sing one.
Okay.
Because I can't. Yeah, I don't know.
If you remember, you have to sing it. So I don't know.
Yes. Didn't happen, Jamie. Perfect.
What was your rugby nickname?
I had two. Beef was one.
Beef?
And Lord was the other. But Lord didn't happen very often. Yeah. So the Beef one was an ironic nickname. Jamie, not having a great deal of beef on the skeletal frame.
Gotcha.
But when I was at high school, go to the gym a little bit, and it wasn't. We had a few people that did. And it was one of the players. Because I'm going to go back. So I was in the Scotland Sevens team, and we were over in Amsterdam at the time, playing that Sevens tourney. And Stephen Much, the physio, who was the Edinburgh physio as well, because we've had to fill out this player profile thing. He says, right, Beef, nickname, what are you called? And I went, well, actually, I didn't really have one. I said, there's a guy at school who used to call me Beef. And he sort of spat his cornflakes out over the table and laughed, and he goes, why on earth were you called Beef? And I was like, Machi, because, when I was at high school, I was quite a big lad. And he that was all he needed to hear. He just thought that was the funniest thing ever, because, I was sort of nicknamed coat hanger as well by a few guys in the Canadian squad, because shoulders like a brook trout. Anyway, so Beef sort of took on, and everyone thought that was hilarious, because I was clearly the smallest guy on any field I went on to, basically. So that was that. Beef was the beefy or the beefster.
All right. Okay, so Beef, who's the player that you love to smash?
Ooh, don't know.
Maybe it's just a positional player.
Yeah, I don't know. It's always nice if you can get a good hit on a back rower, but that's usually pretty painful. Yeah, I'm not sure. Oh, probably the States 10. I'm going to forget his name now. We played them at Newfoundland, and he played Hercus, Mike Hercus.
Okay.
Hercus, I think.
Put a couple good shots on him.
Yeah, but I don't know, Jamie.
That's fair.
Not known for massive hits. Tackled fairly well if someone ran straight into me, but wasn't too good either side.
Right. Any rugby superstitions?
Yeah. Right sock, left sock, right boot, left boot. Unless you're in just unless a changing room was wet or from a game before or something like that, in which case I'd put the right boot on after the right sock. But I didn't really have many superstitions.
Okay.
That was the only one. And I just noticed that I did that. When someone would ask me about superstitions, and I was like, I started checking my pre-game habits to see if I had any. And then I noticed that I just did that. So then that became one.
All right. 2011 squad. Name 3 players you would take on an axe throwing tournament for world domination.
Let's go with Jeb Sinclair.
He'd be a good one.
I think Cudmore from Squamish would kill it.
Yeah.
And
2 forwards so far.
Yeah, 2 forwards. I always take Ryan Smith, but I don't know if he's got the hand-eye coordination for that. So I probably wouldn't take Ryan.
Maybe he's your fifth. Maybe he's the
I'd
seventh.
probably take, I might even take Chauncey O'Toole. I mean, what is the axe throwing? Is this for distance?
No, it's targets.
Ed Fairhurst.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably Eddie.
Yeah, it's probably good.
Yeah, you'd stick it in the bull.
Yeah. What's the most used app on your phone? Work email?
I don't know. Probably right now, probably Instagram.
Okay.
But I might get rid of it.
All right. Wait till I follow you first, though. What's your go-to food?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. That's probably eggs.
Eggs. Okay.
Warm ones. I can't, once they go tepid or lower, I can't trust them. So warm eggs.
All right. Chips or cookies?
Chips.
What kind of chips?
Like barbecue.
Okay. French fries or onion rings?
French fries.
French fries or poutine?
French fries.
Can you get a good poutine out on the West Coast?
Apparently not. I haven't got the frame of reference. I haven't tested them on either side. So, okay. But from what I hear, not great.
Okay. What is your favorite beer?
Oh, done by the Riot Brewery, and it's called the Working Class Hero.
Is that a local brewery?
It is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really good.
Is it a stout or a pilsner? What is it?
It's like a dark mild.
Okay.
So it's malty. I think it's about 3.8, but which is quite nice because then you can you can have a few and enjoy drinking your beer without necessarily feeling super out of control quickly.
Fair enough. Where's the best place for a post-match beer?
Oh, probably Fio's in Colorno.
Little pub?
Colorno. It's in that was in Italy. That was our local club spot after we played games.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Which superhero would you be and why?
Oh, I'm kind of stealing this from Kill Bill, but I kind of like I like the explanation in that at the end for people who've seen it of Superman, and the fact that all superheroes dress up to become the superheroes. They have to put things on, whereas Superman was born Superman, and he has to put things on to become like ordinary people and to try and blend in. And so I like that. It's a sort of understated approach to being a superhero. So most of the time he's dressing up to try and pretend to be like other people, but actually he's Superman. So I always like that.
I like that. That's good. All right. What's your favorite song or your favorite band?
Probably Chili Peppers. Red Hot Chili Peppers is probably my favorite band. Didn't really have a favorite song. I love their Californication album that came out. I remember when that first came out, that was awesome. I was listening to it in the car with my older brother, and he's playing it, and he goes, and after 20-30 minutes he goes, "Oh, what do you think of this?" And I said, "Yeah, it was December the 15th." I said, "Yeah, it's decent. This is really good. I'm enjoying it." And he goes, "Great, because you're getting it for Christmas." And I just laughed, thinking, well, obviously I'm not, because you just wouldn't do that. You wouldn't play someone's Christmas present to them 10 days before Christmas. Sure enough,
he did.
Unwrapped it. I thought, this is pretty CD shaped. And out came Red Hot Chili Peppers Californication with a card. Glad you like it.
Was it a brand new one, or was it the one he was playing in the car?
It was the one he was playing in the car.
That's awesome.
It was, I know. I mean, anyway, just couldn't believe it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. You're on summer vacation. What series are you binge watching right now?
Oh, Line of Duty, Netflix. If you're not watching this, you need to be.
I haven't even heard of it.
It's a crime. Is it a crime thriller? It's about a sort of a police anti-corruption agency. So yeah, it's so intriguing.
You said it was brilliant. On Netflix?
Line of Duty, Netflix.
All right, I'm gonna look that up.
It's probably one of the best. I'd say it's better than Breaking Bad. I'm enjoying it more than Breaking Bad. Okay,
that says something.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to look that up. What's your favorite movie?
It's the Grand Hotel Budapest. Okay. Used to be Terminator 2 or Gladiator.
They're good movies too. All right, last 3 questions for the quick fire. Who would play you in the Netflix movie of your life?
Probably Matt Damon.
That was quick. All right. Who would play the leading lady?
Oh, probably Kate Blanchett.
Okay, that's good. Last one. What would that movie be called?
I don't know. I don't know.
You're not supposed to stress
Jamie,
out.
this is hard. It's supposed to be quick fire.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know.
That's all right. There's a few people
I don't know. I can't. Jay, this is, I don't know. That's terrible. I
don't want you to stress out. It's all right.
Well, I'm getting stressed.
All right. Well, let's move on. Let's move on then. Only a few questions left. Ander, what are your thoughts on what makes great team players?
Attitude and role, understanding your role. For me, I think those two elements. I think it's ultimately being in the service of others. And I know people play sport. You need to derive your own personal satisfaction, and you need to be selfish to a degree. But I think the really great team players are those that are willing to sacrifice themselves for others, and understand that all the efforts they put in as well is for the benefit of others. And with that attitude, obviously there's the on-field as well as the off-field piece, and just trying to support teammates as well as you can, whatever that means in a moment in a game, or whether that's because they're going through a difficult time in their life, and it's off the field. So I think that attitude of service to others is key. And I think role understanding, you can get some people who they're trying really hard and they're trying to put their heart into the game, but they're trying to do too much, and they're trying to do other people's roles as well. And that then works against a team. So I think knowing what your role within the team is, not just positional role, but I guess also situational role too, in what's the strategy for the team, and what nuance does the team need from you in a particular game or a particular half. So I think those two elements, attitude and role understanding, like a deep understanding of where you're meant to be, and what your considerations are, and where you're supposed to be looking, so that you can make good decisions.
That's really good. That's I mean, you could use that for any walk of business life as well, or as a teacher, understanding your role in the school and things like that. I think that one translates to a lot of different fields. Let's fast forward to 2031, 20 years on from that 2011 World Cup in New Zealand. You're having a reunion with those lads. What do you want those guys to remember you as, Ander the player, Ander the man? Like, what do you think what do you think's being said about you? Hopefully,
Probably some of the pieces that I just mentioned there, just from a player standpoint. I think I was never. I mean, you look at, I scored 2 tries for Canada, probably assisted quite a few, but didn't have the gas or the physicality to make many line breaks, to be the finisher or anything like that. And so I think for me, my skill set was about trying to make players around me better, and trying to help them play as well as possible, and making the right decisions so that players with space had good opportunities, and not giving it to players under pressure wherever possible, that kind of thing. So I would hope that, would hope that players might say, well, Ander was good at either putting me through a hole, or giving me that ball in the place where I needed it, or at transferring pressure to the opposition, that kind of thing. Making calls and having an attitude that sort of settled the team. I think when we were under pressure, hopefully that as a player. And then I think off the field, I just was hopefully just a sociable guy who enjoyed a good laugh. And I think being in the entertainment committee on the Canadian team for a number of years with Jeb Sinclair and Ed Fairhurst and a number of other guys, I just really enjoyed that side of the game. Like, I enjoyed having a laugh and trying to make people laugh, and trying to keep morale high and that kind of thing. So I think I don't know if Joker is probably a bit too far, but I'd definitely be, I think I'd be up there as that kind of a character, someone who was always trying to look for the fun in the situation.
Is that where the impressions came to play?
Yeah, I'm not too sure where they came into play. I mean, they did come into play then. Yeah, like I would use them in those situations, for sure, telling stories and things like that. But little anecdotes.
You've let a couple go there. They were pretty good. So currently you're at Queen Margaret High School. deputy head there. Talk to us about that role and talk to us about your school. Like, it's a big equestrian school. You're out on the island. So just what's your school like?
So we're in Duncan, just on Vancouver Island, and next year I think we'll have around 440 students. We're K to 12. So I previously worked at just an 8 to 12 school at Shawnigan Lake, and so it's like watching the drop off is so much fun when these little kindergartens and grade 2 and 3 kids are hopping out the cars and saying hello to them in the morning. And most of the time there's just not a lot that's going wrong in their world, and they're just chipper and chirpy, and that's been a really cool energy with being at Queen Margaret's, and it just gives a different school, a different feel to the school in just from a sort of playful approach, and again that sort of community feel of having parents on campus. And it's predominantly a day school. We do have a boarding program here as well, and we'll have in the region of 100 boarders next year. The high school grade 8 to 12 is about 220, and so we're looking at about sort of 50-50 split junior school, senior school. I'm just excited about the direction of the school at the moment. My role is quite wide-reaching, and so have responsibilities for the academic programs, for equestrian as well. In those two areas, I'm really playing a lot of a support role for the director of equestrian, director of academics, but very much hands-on in the co-curricular and after-school programming, the boarding programs and discipline side of things, and it's just really student life and student experience. So it's a real challenge, and really enjoying it. I think I would say for me, one of the strong points of the school, or what I've really noticed in the last year, is that desire to support individualism. So people who, I feel like people's individuality is really encouraged and supported at this school as well. So that's something I've noticed. But most schools feel like they have really strong communities as well, and so, but I'm really interested in what are those little indicators of community, and what's the body language that's associated with strong communities. And so I like sort of challenging claims around that and trying to encourage what I think are some behaviors that are important in community.
So what is that for you guys? What's your community there? Like, it's got to be a little bit tricky where you've got 5-year-olds right up to 18-year-olds.
Yeah, it is. And my experience as well of this community has all been in COVID as well. So I should mention that too. I arrived, started working in August last year, and I think COVID, all the restrictions have tried as hard as possible to keep people apart, and so we haven't had as much integration of senior students with younger students as I perhaps envisaged, but we haven't really been able to, because of the learning group pieces and various other impediments. But I think that's a huge opportunity. In my experience at Shawnigan Lake, with so many staff kids around campus, the grade 8, 9s and through to 12s, they have a greater sense of responsibility towards others when they're interacting with those kids, those younger people. And they behave differently, and they, in some ways, they play that almost more sort of parental role, or sort of older sibling role, but in a different kind of way, in a very responsible way. And so I like what that brings out of students in grades 10, 11. They get a sense of perspective on their own life development, which is actually, they're not great reflectors when you're at that stage in your life. You just want to plow forward and not really look back. So you don't do a lot of reflection, but I think they realize how much they've developed, and and they I don't know, it's almost a sort of sense of pride in their development, and then they try and then help, I guess, and steer the younger ones. So I'm hoping that we can get that sort of thing going a lot more next year.
Pretty cool. Community is very important for an independent school like Queen Margaret, or where I work. It's part of the fabric of the society in there, for sure.
Yeah.
Lastly, Ander, Any great rugby stories you can share with us? You said you had one earlier you were going to talk, and you said you'd save it for later.
Well, I think, yeah, it was one I reminded myself of as I was speaking about Edinburgh. So I will mention it, but I don't know, there's so many, Jamie. And I think I really enjoyed the characters in rugby, and a lot of my anecdotes really are because of people's little idiosyncrasies and or the way they dealt with certain situations. And it was just I just always found a lot of humor in amongst it. So I think just sort of small things, really, rather than any really sort of major big ones. I think so Derek Lee was someone who I like to tell a few stories about. He played fullback for Scotland, and he was at Edinburgh when I was there, but he would have been probably in his early 30s when I was at Edinburgh, maybe even like 33, 34. This was just one of these guys who, a bit like Craig Culpin, really didn't seem to sort of train that hard, and but he was just brilliant. Like his lines of running and his timing onto the ball, and he never seemed to really struggle for fitness in games, even though we do these pre-seasons at Edinburgh that were like really, really tough. And Derek seemed to sort of find a way not to do the preseason, which, and I'm sure I'm embellishing this, but Monday mornings was, you do your skin fold test, you do your strength testing, and then you'd get into your first weight session of the day, and then you'd probably do some fitness, rugby session, and then another weight session, and that was your Monday. And Derek would come in, and he'd Kendo was our strength and conditioning coach. And he'd come in, he'd be like, and he'd have a very dry sense of humor. He'd be like, Kendo, so you'll be absolutely delighted to hear that I'm available to do the skin test, the skin fold test. So not a problem, sign me up. And then he basically would not do the strength testing. And all of his weights were done with 80 kilos on the bench, 100 kilos on the back squat, never changed it. And there was no such thing as a heavy or a light day for Derek Lee. But anyway, that was the sort of sense of the guy. But he won these man of the match competitions, or the man of the match prize, probably about 3 or 4 in that first season I was with Edinburgh. It was later known as the Todd Blackadder Award, because I think Todd won it about 7 games, like in a row, non-stop. And everyone's like, Toddy, I think, the final whistle, it's like, mate, you better head over and just go and collect your award. Yeah. But so Derek had won all these man of the match competitions, and we were sponsored by Virgin Trains at that time. And so Virgin Trains would give the man of the match. Part of that was you get this model train, that you'd have on the model railways. And they're fairly expensive, and really nice piece of kit if you're into that sort of thing. And so the man of the match would get these. Now, towards the end of that my season there, Todd Blackadder brought in this idea of a little mini ceremony and an acknowledgement for 100 club games. If you played 100 games for your club, you get a special cap and I think a jersey and acknowledgement. So Derek was already on about 135 games for Edinburgh. So he was getting, like, retroactively getting his caps. So up he comes, and the guy who used to do the announcing at Murrayfield, and he had quite a sort of high, sharp Edinburgh accent, and he was like, "Right, Derek, you've got you've had your man of the match awards." And at this stage, like, of proceedings, all the sponsors were in the room as well, like all the Virgin Trains people were in the room. And he goes, yeah, Derek, so apparently you've been getting all these nice trains from Virgin, and you've just sort of been giving them all away. And just to sort of try and put him on the spot and I guess sort of embarrass him a bit and see what he'd say. But like, Derek was so sharp and had such a dry sense of humor. Immediately, he sort of looked around briefly and he went, well, to be quite honest with you, I had quite a few trains, but I never got given any track. And I was getting a little bit tired of dragging it around the carpet on a piece of string. So just hilariously quick, wonderful. Everyone had this image of 33-year-old Derek dragging his little train around the carpet. It was just epic. And so I just always enjoy those sorts of quick bits of humor and quips and things that people would do. And but yeah, no, Derek was one. I don't know, other stuff, other things that just really, just fond memories of things like going to the bars. Like we went to the Georgian bars in Tbilisi when we were there. I don't know if you've ever been to Tbilisi, but it's a interesting, really interesting place. Just with the history and the war, and just the war, and anyway, so, but we were like, right, we're going to go to these Georgian bars. Apparently it's a real experience. I was like, okay, fine, I'll go and get cleaned up in the Georgian bath, no problem. So in we went, and we were in this room, and I don't think anyone really knew what was going to happen. And but in there, everything tiled, roof, side walls, everything, and then there was two little pools off at the bottom end of the bath, and one was really deep, almost like when like an old school rugby bath that you get was really hot bath. So we were all in there and enjoying that. And there was another shallow bath next to it, but no one had really got, or someone had got into it, realized it was cold, and said, don't bother with that one, get yourself in here. So I was in the hot bath, just enjoying a bit of banter with the boys, and in comes this Georgian fella, absolutely massive, probably like bigger than any of our players, and clearly some wrestling, hero from Georgia or something. But I don't know, he just sort of grunts at us. There was a lot of translating and hand movements going on because he didn't really speak English, and he was mainly sort of grunting. And we worked out that he was asking for someone like to volunteer to sort of come up and be cleaned, which I had not predicted was happening here. So everyone was like, right, Beef, you're in. So I was basically thrown in his general direction by the boys, and he sort of pointed at me and said, "Rugby?" And to which I went, "Yeah, of course." And then he just laughed because I was about a quarter of his weight, and he was like, "What are you possibly going to do on the rugby pitch?" So anyway, he pointed at his little tiled bench that he had on the edge of the room. So I lay on that, and he went, flip over. So I went over on my front, and he got this bit of string in his bucket with very liquid and soap and suds and stuff. And he just dunked it in, and he lifted it up, and then he ran his hand down it, and the lather was just incredible. It was such an impressive lather. And then he started ultimately physically abusing me with the wash of a light. I mean, it was the most aggressive wash I've ever experienced. And his big sausage fingers came in, and he just absolutely just got stuck in amongst me. I was exhausted in about a minute and a half. It was just the most painful massage wash I'd ever had. Then instead of just grunting again at me to turn over, he gets a big meat cleaver in his hand, slaps it in as hard as he can on the inside of my thigh, straight in there, and just whoop, one massive big hook. And I was flung up in the air, and no joke, and I landed on my back, and then he did my front. And then at the end, I thought, I really don't know where I'm going here. And he clearly did. Hand on the shoulder, threw me. And I was so slippery because I was just covered in suds. So he threw me, and I went flying down the end of his bench where there was a slope off the end of it. And I slipped it went down the slide into his 6-inch depth of cool water to sort of close all the pores off. Oh my goodness. I was absolutely violated, and it was unbelievable, Jamie. So that was my Georgian bath experience. And like it's stuff like that. And I've got some funny stories from Japanese baths as well, but I won't share that one. But stuff like that. It's just amazing,
Did any of the other guys partake in that, or was it just you?
Yeah, no, I think he basically did the whole team. It was phenomenal. So there was about sort of 14 of us, and we came away smelling exceptional, and we were a little I don't think we needed a rub from the team from the massage from the massage table later either, because he did a number on us, worked out all the knots.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was unreal.
I don't know if I'd have the capability to do that.
It was, and I don't know if it's because I prefer the story this way, but it was really unanticipated, Jamie. I thought I was going for a nice soak, and it was a contact session, really.
Oh, that's awesome. Listen, thanks very much for your time. I've had a blast, had some good laughs and learned a lot. So thank you very much for your time, Andrew. Really appreciate it.
No problem, Jamie. Thanks very much. Great to chat.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks so much, Andrew. That was awesome. Love the the great stories. I for sure am not going to be visiting a bathhouse. I don't think I could. I don't think I could handle that. So, hats off to you and your lads for taking that up. That was a great story. But thanks again for sharing some time and spending some time with us. I really appreciate it, and wish you nothing but the best of luck going forward in this school year. Still with COVID, still active around the world. Coming up soon, we'll get Thunder Indigenous Rugby coming up next. They'll be our next guests. We have Connor Keys and Joss Larson. We're trying to get some dates nailed down. That goes the same with Harry Jones and Alicia Alare. I just want to say, as always, I got to thank everybody who's listening and those that are spreading this rugby world. Anything I can do to help Canadian rugby players and Canadian rugby in general is amazing. So make sure that if you enjoy these, you're sharing them, you're giving feedback so other people can access them and see what it's all about. As always, got to say thanks to my son Rylan for supplying us with our intro and outro music. And until next time, this is Jamie. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay sane, and most importantly, keep on rocking.